When you first start studying Animal Farm, you might be overwhelmed by some of the political terminology used to discuss the novel. Trust me, you're going to get so much more out of this book if you have an understanding of some of these political ideas. Today, we're going to talk about democracy, socialism, communism, capitalism, fascism, and totalitarianism. Let's start with democracy because that's possibly the form of government that is most familiar to you already. In a democracy, power is vested in the people. In Australia, every few years we have the opportunity to vote for representatives in Parliament who debate and pass laws on our behalf. I know what you're thinking. Don't we have a monarch? And it's true, and that technically makes Australia a federal parliamentary constitutional monarchy. It's complicated. For all intents and purposes, we're a democracy and we vote for our leaders. Orwell didn't really like the monarchy and definitely despised the class divide that existed in Britain. In an essay titled The Lion and the Unicorn, he wrote, "England is the most class-ridden country under the sun. It is a land of snobbery and privilege, ruled largely by the old and silly." Democracy, according to Orwell, was the antidote to this privilege, putting power in the hands of ordinary people. He acknowledged that democracy wasn't perfect, but it was the best system of government they had. In England, such concepts as justice, liberty, and objective truth are still believed in. They may be illusions, but they are very powerful illusions. The English electoral system, for instance, is an all but open fraud. In a dozen obvious ways, it is gerrymandered in the interest of the moneyed class. But until some deep change has occurred in the public mind, it cannot become completely corrupt. You do not arrive at the polling booth to find men with revolvers telling you which way to vote, nor are the votes miscounted, nor is there any direct bribery. Although he never met Winston Churchill, he'd probably agree with Churchill's observation that no one pretends that democracy is perfect or all-wise. Indeed, it has been said that democracy is the worst form of government, except for all those other forms that have been tried from time to time. Socialism and communism are two other important ideas Orwell explores in Animal Farm. These words, which are often used interchangeably, go back to the Communist Manifesto, which was written by German philosophers Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Socialism is the idea that a society should own the means of production, such as factories and farms. Socialism was really a response to the Industrial Revolution, which saw a small number of industrialists grow very wealthy, causing widespread inequality. Communism refers to a movement ultimately leading to a communist society, where the means of production is owned by the community. There are no social classes, and indeed, no government. Throughout history, there's never been a true communist society. Again and again, we've seen socialist movements rise up, take over, and then become incredibly corrupt and authoritarian governments. That's exactly what happened after the Russian Revolution of 1917. Animal Farm is very much Orwell's response to the USSR's descent into totalitarianism. So how do these ideas of socialism and communism relate to Animal Farm? Well, we know that George Orwell was a democratic socialist. In the essay Why I Write, he notes, "Every line of serious work that I've written since 1936 has been written directly or indirectly against totalitarianism and for democratic socialism." Orwell believed people should strive for a free and equal society. In The Lion and the Unicorn, he argued for the nationalisation of land, mines, railways, banks, and major industries, limitations of income, and reform of the education system along democratic lines. And while this might seem far-fetched, remember that Orwell wrote this during the upheaval of the Second World War. It was entirely conceivable that there could be a fundamental shift of power, as well as an end to class privilege and the rule of the old. Another important idea to understand is capitalism. In a capitalist society, the means of production, the farms, the factories, the mines, are privately owned. Businesses compete with each other to create employment, wealth, and prosperity. Socialism and capitalism are both ideas. The real world tends to be a little messy, and I think many countries exist somewhere in between these extremes. We call countries like these social democracies. A country like Australia, for example, has a capitalist system that creates employment and prosperity while spending taxes on social welfare, schools, and healthcare. Fascism is another idea you should be familiar with when studying Animal Farm. Fascism refers to authoritarian governments which are often controlled by a powerful dictator and a single political party. Fascist governments believe that only unity and military strength can help a nation endure war and economic difficulties. Examples of fascist governments include Nazi Germany and fascist Italy. When Orwell was writing Animal Farm, Britain was at war with both of these countries, and fascism was a very real threat to democracies across Europe. In The Lion and the Unicorn, Orwell expresses his disdain for fascism. Socialism aims ultimately at a world state of free and equal human beings. It takes the equality of human rights for granted. Nazism assumes just the opposite. The driving force behind the Nazi movement is the belief in human inequality, the superiority of Germans to all other races, the right of Germany to rule the world. The final and perhaps most important idea that you need to be familiar with is totalitarianism. Totalitarianism refers to any system of government where a single political party rules without opposition. These governments typically maintain control through propaganda, the use of military strength, violence and terror, and mass surveillance. To finish, a quick recap of some of the terms you'll find useful when discussing Animal Farm. Democracy is a system of government where people have the power to elect representatives in Parliament. Socialism is the idea that the state should own the means of production. Communism refers to a revolutionary movement leading to a communist state where people own and share everything. Capitalism is an economic system where privately owned businesses compete to create prosperity and wealth. Fascism is an authoritarian government, often controlled by a single powerful dictator. And totalitarianism is any system of government where a single party rules without opposition, maintaining control through propaganda, the use of military strength, violence and terror, and mass surveillance. An understanding of these political terms will help you discuss, engage with and appreciate the ideas in Animal Farm, which is very much a cautionary tale about the dangers of totalitarianism in all its forms.